So this is a walk around Skanderbeg Square in Tirana. Skanderbeg was an Albanian military leader in the 15th century who led rebellions against the Ottoman Empire, which I'll discuss a bit more about later on. Moving away from the statue, the first landmark on the square that we come to is the Tirana Mosque, which was a mosque originally built in the 18th century but has been recently restored. Unfortunately, the mosque is closed at the moment due to COVID, so you can't visit the mosque. However, as you can see from the outside, it's quite unique in terms of some of the frescoes that you can see, certainly around the external sort of patio area. What I've never seen on a mosque before is pictures of places, which you'll see shortly when I get a bit closer in. Unfortunately, this is one of the first videos that I made with my camera, so I haven't quite got to grips with using the zoom function properly to get in and get some close-up shots of it. But hopefully you can see there above the door just some of the some of the pictures, like I say, which are quite unique. Certainly from what I know about mosques and from mosques that I've seen. But yeah, the frescoes were particularly impressive. Albania is a majority Muslim country. About 60% of the population say that they do follow Islam, although it doesn't seem a particularly conservative or strongly religious country whatsoever. Next to the mosque you see the clock tower, which you're supposed to be able to go up to and get some nice views over the square and the city. I did try on a number of occasions to go up, however it was closed every time, so I wasn't able to do so that was a bit of a shame. Moving back towards the main part of the square, the construction that you'll see at the far end of the square is a big building that's being built called the Eyes of Tirana, which I'm sure will be quite impressive when it's finished. However, one thing it does stop is getting a nice view of a sunset over the square because of, as you can see from the position, it blocks out that sunset, so that is a bit of a shame, although I'm sure economically it will be a good thing for Tirana, so maybe that's more important than tourists getting a nice view of a sunset over the main square. Moving on now, the building that's in shot now was or is the Palace of Culture. Anyone who's travelled around Eastern Europe, the former communist countries, of which Albania is one, will know that they like having palaces of culture. This one here still has the opera house. There's still an opera house, functioning opera house in there. The other thing that became obvious to see was a bookstore, and there is a cafe bar as well, which I'm not quite sure how that fits into culture, but it was quite nice, and the only place directly on the square where you can have a drink or something to eat. You'll see now I was trying to get a shot of the flag, the Albanian flag in all its glory. The wind wasn't working with me. The flag is a double-headed eagle on a red background. The double-headed eagle is a national symbol of Albania. So moving on, there's some more construction taking place, and we're now moving towards the National History Museum of Albania. It was quite an interesting museum, definitely well worth spending a bit of time in if you find yourself in Tirana and you're interested in the history of Albania. On the front is quite an impressive mosaic, impressive in terms of how it looks. The image itself is a bit of socialist realism, so obviously it isn't actually very real whatsoever, but that's just my opinion, obviously. Moving forward onto the square and to the left of the museum is actually Tirana's major COVID-19 vaccination centre. Now, I was based just off the main square in my time here for a few days, and I saw very few people going in to get the vaccine. Chatting to a few people, there's a lot of vaccine scepticism and a lot of hesitancy, and people seem particularly worried about being made to get one of the Chinese vaccines, which apparently are being offered to people there. So a bit more about the square generally. As you can see, it's quite a big square. It covers about 40,000 square metres, and it's actually made of stone from all the different Albanian lands, different parts of the country. I should have zoomed in on some of the stone because the stones are actually marked, or some of the stones are marked, showing which part of the country they did come from. But again, still not quite got my head around how to use my camera just yet. As I said earlier, it's named after Skanderbeg, who was a military leader who led rebellions against the Ottoman Empire. He won a number of famous victories against the Ottoman Empire. It was rare that the Ottomans lost, and he's credited with delaying the arrival of the Ottomans in Europe, which meant that when they finally did get here, they were easier to hold off and didn't take over as much as they might have done in the circumstances. There's a lot of other administrative and government buildings around the square. The one we've just moved on from is the National Bank of Albania. And further in the background, in the distance there, are things like the City Hall and other government buildings. Just another perspective of the square there. And obviously you can see the mountains in the background as well. So it does frame Tirana quite nicely, those mountain views. The square's actually only been in this format since 2017, so very recently. Up until then, it was still open to traffic. So this has only been quite a new development. You'll see there's a few water features there, and one of the things that also happens in the square, and one of the reasons why it's sloped, is that they let water out to cool the square down, to almost flood it on occasion, especially in the summer when the temperature's getting up to and above 40 degrees. So that was quite useful. And during the course of the day, as it was August, you did see a lot of people in the water features making use of that and cooling themselves down quite a little bit. Moving on towards the end of this little tour now, you'll see a number of colours on the buildings. That was something quite common in Tirana. The former mayor of Tirana, who is now the Prime Minister, was an artist, a painter, and one thing that he was very keen on doing was getting a lot more colour into the city. So a lot of the buildings are painted in different colours, different shades, which is quite a nice contrast to many places that were formerly in the Eastern Bloc or the former communist states. Just moving in here now, just on the edge of the square, is a park. It's called Europe Park. It's not the most pleasant park or the biggest park that I've ever seen. As you'll see very shortly, to be honest, it looks a bit like a bit of a scruffy patch of grass. You did see people sitting around enjoying it, having a drink, having some food. But I don't know, maybe there's potential there for them to do a bit more with it. Certainly when I was here for my one-day trip in December, it was all lit up and they had something there relating to Christmas or winter, which might be a bit more interesting. And now we're back at the start, so there's another view of Skanderbeg, the Albanian flag,